Hi, everyone. My name is Albert, one of the co-founders at VectorShift. Today, we're going to talk about an exciting new feature that we just launched called the Conversational Nodes. We made another video about this just right before this, and we're going to go through a more advanced example where we go through some of the additional nodes and talk through in a more advanced example. So in this advanced example, we're going to first send an image in the chatbot, and we're going to ask the user for their name and email and introduce kind of the VectorShift service. Then we're going to validate whether the email is a valid email or not. If it's not a valid email, we should ask the user for a valid email. And if it is, we should store it in Google Sheets and use the conditional to move forward in the conversation. Then we're going to build kind of a traditional VectorShift chatbot, but then also incorporating another node called the button node to request whether the user wants to ask another question or not. All right, let's go right in and let's go ahead and build this. So let's go ahead and click the conversational type of the VectorShift pipelines. This will populate the start flag. The start flag defines the start of a conversation. So as I mentioned, at the very beginning, we should introduce the VectorShift service. Let's just say, welcome to the VectorShift chatbot. What is your name? I think this is a good time to introduce some of our additional talk nodes. Talk nodes are, just like the message node, situations where you want to send some information into the chatbot. We have 4 types of talk nodes. We have the message node that we just showed here, which is going to send this message, into the chatbot at this time. We have an image node, we have a card node, and we have a carousel node. An image is just what it sounds like. It's going to send an image at that step in the conversation. A card node, is a card. It offers, a title, a description, an image, and then allows kind of a link that you can put to allow for the user to click on the link. A carousel is just multiple cards that you can put in sequence and allow users to toggle between the cards. Let's go ahead and actually just use an image node to show an example. Let's go ahead and upload an image of the VectorShift homepage, just for demonstration purposes. So I upload a screenshot of our homepage, and when I connect this together, it's going to send this image into the conversation at this step. Now, let's go ahead and capture what the user responds, which is their name at this step in the conversation. All right, so the next step is we need to ask the user for their email. Let's go ahead and use another message node and write, what is your email? And finally, let's listen for the user to respond. So the TLDR is talk nodes send information at that step in the conversation. Listen nodes pause the conversation and wait for the user to respond and store their data in a variable, in this case, the response variable. All right, so let's go ahead and do the validation now. We want to really validate whether this email is a valid email or not. We can use an LLM to do this. Let's go ahead and pull out an OpenAI LLM. Let's go ahead and write, your job is to validate whether or not the user sent a valid email in a chat conversation. Output, if the email is not valid, output no. If the email is valid, output yes. This allows us to build a condition node off of this output to route the pipeline accordingly. Let's go ahead and connect capture 1 to this LLM node, which will pass the stored email under capture_1.response to this LLM. Now, let's go ahead and use a condition node. A condition node branches the pipeline into different paths based on what you define on this condition node. So let's go ahead and use the OpenAI 0.response variable. And let's just say if it equals yes, we want to go path 0. Now, let's go ahead and connect the OpenAI 0.response again. And let's say if it equals no, we want to do something else. What do we want to do if it's not a valid email? We want to ask the user for the email again. So we need to create a cycle. So let's connect path 1 to the message 1 node. There we go. So a cycle is a loop in the conversation. And at the entry point in the cycle, we now have two inputs, input and cyclic input. What that means is the first time around, it's going to ask, what is your email? And the second time around, it will show whatever is under cyclic input, which defaults to what is under input. However, let's just say here, you entered an invalid email. Please enter a valid email. All right, let's go ahead and continue the conversation. So there's a couple of things we want to do when the email is valid and they provide the name. Let's go ahead and ask the user for how can I help today? Let's go ahead and connect path 0 to the message node. Now, as I mentioned, if the name is provided and the email is valid, we want to store the data in a Google Sheet. Let's say I have a Google Sheet with name and email as two columns. Let's go ahead and pull out a Google Sheet node and use the add new row functionality. Let's go ahead and select the May 1st spreadsheet. Select the spreadsheet, and it's populated the fields onto this node. All right, so name is under capture 0 and email is under capture 1. Let's go ahead and connect these nodes to this Google Sheet node. Now, you might notice a problem here. The problem is the way that's connected currently is that even if it's an invalid email, it's going to populate the sheet. And say if someone provides 3 invalid emails, right, and it's going through this loop, it's going to populate everything. There's going to be 3 rows that show up in your Google Sheet. What we want is we only want the information to be populated once, and only if the email is valid. So we have a special advanced feature in VectorShift called dependencies, which you can find here. This allows you to make a node dependent on another node, even if it's not passing inputs to that node. So what we want is we want to make this dependent on path 0, right? Even though this path 0 is not at all like dependent, it's not passing information, to this Google Sheet. We want to only run it if path 0 is triggered. So let's go ahead and do that. So under dependencies, let's connect to path 0. All right. So this will only run if path 0 is triggered. Let's go ahead and run this pipeline as it is now so that we can show you what is going on. So, it's typed in welcome to VectorShift, what is your name? It's printed out the image. Now it's waiting for me to respond. Let's go ahead and write Albert Mel. Let's go ahead and what if I type in a lot of gibberish? We can see through the traces, right, that this LM said no, that it's not a valid email, and the data is not populated in the sheet. Now, what if I enter Albert at VectorShift.ai? Now it's produced how can I help, and it's successfully populated my email into this Google Sheet. All right, let's go ahead and continue making this chatbot. So what if I want to make a standard answer my question chatbot over here? We've done this multiple times. Let me go ahead and just build this really quickly. Let me drag out another LM node and prompt it as answer the question based on context, right? And let me drag out a knowledge base. Let's select a knowledge base which has the VectorShift URL in it so it can answer basic questions about VectorShift. Let's go back to the workflow. And at this step, we need to listen to the user and for any questions. And then we're going to take the question and we're going to query the knowledge base. Then we're going to pass the related data and the question to this LLM. So the question is under capture 2. And the knowledge base context we need to connect. All right. So this LM response, we need to send to the user through a message node. And let's go ahead and actually use the button node at this step to actually show this new node, which presents buttons, which are options, and which allow the user to select between them. And then based on what they select, you can route the pipeline in different ways. So how about we ask at this step, do you have any additional questions? And let's just give two options, yes versus no. And what this allows is it will present two buttons at this step in the conversation, yes and no, and then we could do different things based on what they say. So how about, if they do have questions, we need to loop back to how can I help? Let's go ahead and move this a little closer and loop yes to how can I help? So this creates a second loop in this pipeline, and it's highlighted in this light blue. So let's change the cyclic input to what is your question? All right. And then say no, maybe we will just send a message that says, thank you. Have a nice day. And then it'll end the conversation right there. Let's go ahead and run this chatbot now. All right, so it's present the image and ask me for my name. Let's go ahead and write Albert Mel. And let's just go ahead and write Albert at VectorShift.ai. And now it's validated everything. It's put my name into the spreadsheet again. And it's waiting for me to ask a question. That's right, what is VectorShift? We've queried the data. We're asking the LLM to generate the response now. And it generated the response. It's printed, do you have any additional questions? And now it presents two buttons, yes versus no. I'm going to say, yes, I do have additional questions. And now it presents the cyclic input. What is your question? What are VectorShift use cases? So now it's asking, it's querying the data. It's asking the LLM to generate the response. And now the response is provided. And now it's asking me again if I have any additional questions. I'm going to say no. And now it says, thank you. Have a nice day. All right. I'm going to show you how to deploy this really quickly. All you got to do is press deploy, go to export, chatbot, give your chatbot a name. And a new functionality that we have is this message delay, which means what is the time delay that you want between different messages. Let's go ahead and export and open the chatbot, and you can run this chatbot over here as well. There we go. So hopefully this was helpful. I'm happy to answer any questions. Feel free to reach out if you do. But I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.